One of the problems is if you do this stretch wrong, it causes you to do a lot of intense side bending on your back, but it doesn't stretch the tight, strong tensor fasciae lata muscle and IT band. It just overloads the low back. Hi guys, it's Paul CHEK. Welcome back to my Paul CHEK YouTube channel, Paul CHEK Live. Today I thought I'd teach you a stretch that very few people know how to do correctly, which is why they don't get good results with it. But it's really important. That's how you stretch your iliotibial band. The iliotibial band connects into the tensor fasciae lata, which attaches right here on your pelvis, right around your anterior superior iliac spine for the technical name. And sometimes people get a real sore tender spot there. A lot of runners have this problem. And if the tensor fasciae lata gets tight, it puts a lot of tension through the big sheet of connective tissue that attaches here at your tibia, and it can put so much tension that it can cause the knee to go into what's called a valgus position and be very uncomfortable for the knee and throw your alignment off. And one of the most common causes of that is a poor functioning inner unit, your pelvic floor, deep abdominal wall, diaphragm, and multifidus or deep spinal stabilizers, because they actually have to hold the pelvis and the rib cage and the spine and the shoulder girdle, because the shoulder girdle rides on the rib cage. If the integrity of the core is not there, then your brain has to start turning other muscles on to try to stabilize your pelvis to give your lumbar spine some stability. So a lot of athletes, like running athletes that don't have good core control, end up having chronically tight hamstrings and chronically tight iliotibial band issues, which is really the tensor fasciae lata. The iliotibial band is very thick, powerful, strong fascia with a tensile loading force of about something like 2,500 pounds per square inch. It's really thick and strong. You could use it you could tow a car with it if you had a long enough IT band. So when this tensor fasciae lata that looks like a banana, you can see it when runners flex their hip. It's right here, and it connects into the tensor fasciae lata, and about 85% of the gluteus maximus muscle merges into it here. So those two muscles connect to the knee. So when your foot strikes the ground and the tensor fasciae lata and the glutes contract, it actually has a stabilizing effect on the knee, and it helps absorb vibration so it doesn't deteriorate the cartilage, kind of like why batters and golfers wear gloves to protect their hands from vibration. So the IT band is really an important stabilizing system in the knee, and if your feet are planted, it helps move your pelvis and stabilize your pelvis as well. If it gets tight, though, it puts a lot of tension in there, and it can cause pain here and pain in the knee. And another thing that a lot of people don't realize is that the large intestine has a reflex zone through the lateral thigh here. So oftentimes people are having tension in their iliotibial band and lateral thigh because irritation of the colon causes it to send energy down there, and it causes tension through those tissues, and oftentimes you'll feel knots if you roll it on a foam roller. That usually indicates that you're eating something that's bothering your intestinal tract, or that you're constipated and your colon's not healthy. So when I show my students these things and they start monitoring their diet and their bowel health and paying attention to their flexibility and the quality of their tissues and how they feel when they use foam rollers, they notice as their internal systems are healthier, then their muscles and joints feel a lot better, because there's a very complex relationship between them, which I teach in the CHEK Institute through our Holistic Lifestyle Coaching program. And as you go through your training, you get all sorts of maps showing all the connections between the spine, the glands, the organs, and the muscles, and the meridians. So you see how the whole system is like a living web of bioelectrical connections. So to stretch it, there's a couple of key things. One, you want to have a doorway or a wall where you can brace yourself Then if you're going to stretch the left iliotibial band like I am, you're going to step across it. You want your foot to always stay flat on the ground, because if your foot rolls up like that, it'll take the stretch away. So you want that foot flat on the ground. Then what you're going to do is use this hand, and you want to keep the pelvis as level as you can. If you go into the stretch and you take your hand away and you don't feel the difference, you're doing it wrong. One of the problems is if you do the stretch wrong, it causes you to do a lot of intense side bending on your back, but it doesn't stretch the tight, strong tensor fasciae lata muscle and IT band. It just overloads the low back. So what you do is, as you're doing the stretch, you put your hand right here on your hip, and you visualize that you're pushing your pelvis down so that your pelvis stays more level, and you use the lean to drive the arm. So as I'm leaning in, the pressure is going through and down into this hand. So it looks like this. I drop in, but I'm pressing down. That pressing down causes my pelvis to pivot on my hip joint, which actually has the effect of taking the origin of the muscle further away from the insertion to stretch it. So I'm dropping in. Now I feel a stretch on it right now. It feels like it's running right along the front of my pocket here. Then what I want to do, I want to keep that hip down. I can turn my pelvis so my pocket is moving that way, like someone's pulling me. And then I can slide the hip forward. So it's in, turn, slide. And that gives me a nice stretch right there. But be careful that foot doesn't turn up, because it'll take the stretch away. Okay? And so I can either stretch it passively and just hang in there and just keep adjusting as it releases over 60 seconds or more. But I don't recommend doing that before doing any running activities, because you can sedate the muscle and confuse it, and that can set you up for injury. If you're going to do something like this before an activity, then you want to push back against yourself. So I'm using my hip muscles to push my pelvis back like an isometric. Then I relax, sink in for 5, turn, slide forward, inhale, push into my hand. I'm trying to use these muscles to push me that way. And then I relax, sink in, turn, let it stretch for 5, and I'm getting a really nice release in there. And then you check the other side, so you can see what it looks like from behind. Step across the leg that you're going to stretch, hand on hip. As you lean in, push the weight down, so you're trying to keep the pelvis pushed down so the pelvis is level. Slide in, keep the foot flat. Once you feel a good stretch, if you want to increase it, turn the pelvis forward and slide the hips forward. And I got a great stretch right there. Inhale, push against your left hand, which is what I'm doing right now. Relax, exhale, sink in, turn, slide forward, inhale. I'm pushing back for 5. Remember I said, if you take your hand off and you don't feel any difference, you're doing it wrong. So by pushing down with that hand, it really increases the stretch. When I take my hand away, I feel it shift, like the stretch goes out of there fairly quickly. When you come out of the stretch, don't come out quick. Come out slow. The body can react by tightening up. It can be a bit of a shock for the body. You shouldn't come out of stretches where you're really getting a good stretch fast ever. So generally what you want to do is 3 to 5 times on each side. Remember, if one side, you should always check both sides before you stretch. If one side's a lot tighter, focus on getting the tight side to at least the level of the looser side. Don't ever stretch the looser side further than you can take the other side, or you'll just throw your body out of balance. You always want to try to stretch till the body's calibrated more evenly. It's actually a lot safer to have 2 tight muscles, so both tight, both hamstrings tight, or both IT bands or tensor fasciae lata tight, than one, because whenever you have asymmetrical tension, it creates torsion in the body. Whenever you have a load on the body with torsion, it sets you up for much more likelihood of injury. So those tips can make a huge difference for you. But if you find that you have chronically tight iliotibial bands, I would encourage you to look carefully at your diet. Look at my book, How to Eat, Move, and Be Healthy. It shows you how to read your poops, so you can see if you're having an unhealthy reaction in your gut. You can look at my 4-day rotation diet and try rotating your foods to see if you can identify what's irritating you. You can foam roll the IT band to help loosen it up, and pay close attention if you've got sore spots and knots in there. That's almost always a reflex from the large intestine. So there's a few things, if you put them all together and pay attention to how your body's responding, you'll do really well. But remember, core dysfunction is one of the most common causes of chronically tight IT bands and hamstrings and problems with the gut. Now the sigmoid colon, the distal end of the colon, the bottom end also reflexes through the hamstrings and the entire sciatic distribution. So you can end up with tight hamstrings, tight IT bands, and a sore lateral thigh because you've got some kind of irritation or undiagnosed pathology in the large intestine. So those are just a few tips. That's the kind of stuff we teach at the CHEK Institute. I do have information that helps you with all sorts of stretch assessments and stretching in my book, How to Eat, Move, and Be Healthy. HLC1, Holistic Lifestyle Coach Level 1 course online, available at CHEK Institute.com, which shows you how to implement my information from How to Eat, Move, and Be Healthy and more. And you can always check out the rest of our programs at the CHEK Institute. You can look into the CHEK Academy. We got a lot for you. 4 years of rock and roll, solid, get the job done right training and be the best out there. So hey, lots of love. Thanks for sharing with me. Hope to see you again real soon with something new and useful. Aho, great spirit.